Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I'm joined this week by a very special guest, returning guest on the podcast, which is always fun, Leighton Healy, who is the CEO of Know How. Leighton, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Hayden. Hey, great to be here, man.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to chat with you and your audiences. And
Yeah.
You guys do good work, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, it's always exciting when we get to have people return to the podcast because maybe we get to talk about stuff that we missed previously and go in things a little bit deeper. I'd love to maybe start, and I think we did something similar last time, but I'd love to start with just a little bit of your background and how you started Know How and how you got into Know How, and then from there we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of the big thing that you've been working on with some other people, which is the state of the industry. So let's start there. What is Know How? How'd you get started?
Yeah, Know How is an app. So we're an AI software company, and specifically we become the source of how we do everything in hundreds of restoration companies.
Love it.
In their pockets.
Yeah.
And so you can think about kind of this old, outdated idea of like a standard operating procedure binder and then like an overflowing SharePoint or Google Files, kind of coupled with, all these individuals in my team that have years of experience,
Yep.
but you can only access it if you can get them on the phone.
Yeah.
And so how do you bring all of that together into one simple tool that's branded to my company that allows me to onboard my staff, provide them with the ability to solve any problem independently to my standard. And then ultimately when the way we do things changes, how do you just make it effortless to make sure that everybody has the right way to do it? So whether it's carrier guidelines or how to use this piece of equipment,
right.
how to get my people using this piece of software, or how to just get this, fax machine, or people still use fax machines to actually send this to this insurance company.
Right.
It still requires a
Right.
fax number, right? It's just one simple question to our AI Howie, and we do that in any language.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
So the brainchild behind that, obviously, I mean, restoration seemingly more so than a lot of other industries is there's just a lot of moving parts.
Right.
And all those moving parts have to come together and a lot of times in an emergency situation.
Right.
We had a podcast earlier today where we were talking with someone that mentioned that was the kind of the differentiator for her, that she'd come from other backgrounds, other project management situations or operations management, but what was different and challenging about restoration was you're doing all of those same things, but in an emergency situation. So an app like Know How or some knowledge like that can be super beneficial, especially when you need it now. I need to know this stuff now.
Yeah. No, we look at, we focus on market verticals that fit 6 characteristics.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, we're very interested in kind of macro driving events. So the state of the industry is a reflection that we're a very research-driven product. We've introduced a new category of product into the industry, into the market, and so anytime you're trying to do something new, it always requires you to choose your steps, right?
Yeah.
And one of the best ways that we've found to choose our steps is to lead with a kind of a scouting mission of research.
Yeah.
And we believe that it's important to be a good house guest in any industry that you're part of. Whether you take up residence or you're there and you just become part of the furniture, or you're just kind of there for a period of time.
Yeah.
But we really believe in if we do a lot of research, let's share that research.
Right.
And try to be a good partner. So we're focused on industries specifically that are experiencing a whole bunch of different kind of macro dynamics. So one of the macro dynamics is that the profile of the worker who does the work is changing very quickly.
Right.
And I'll give you 2 characteristics. One is they tend to be more flighty, meaning they don't stay as long. And number 2 is that this is an individual who has, for a variety of reasons, has an ability to retain training at a lower level than a lot of previous workforce generations. And so how do you equip a worker who they're starting from a lower point of industry competence than previous generations? We can see that in the data. Over 65% of new entrants into this market have never worked in general construction.
Yeah.
So it's the vast majority of people that come into this industry have never been on a job site. We like to joke sometimes that this is a workforce that if you tell them to grab a Phillips screwdriver, they're like, I thought his name was Doug, right?
Yeah.
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 And so you're like, oh boy. So you're starting, where before you'd maybe hire people and they're on the 30-yard line. A lot of these workers are willing, they're capable, they're able-bodied, but they're still in the locker room from a skill perspective.
Yeah.
And so there's a need to skill people up. Another macro component is that so much of the consumer technology experience has trained that individual how knowledge should be accessible, how it should just be very dynamic, and it really powers almost a level of confidence that that worker needs to be able to act, on their own independently, without hesitating and say, I think I'll just wait for my boss to call me back. So we believe that is a trend that's not going anywhere. We're also very passionate about the fact that so much of the hard-won knowledge that's in this industry is in the minds of just long-standing, long-suffering sometimes restorers, and a lot of them are not. They don't have a plan to leave that knowledge.
Yeah.
And their idea of a good Thursday afternoon is not sitting down and writing SOPs on a Word document, right? It's just it's completely impractical. It's not how they want to spend their golden years. So as an AI company, we come alongside that individual and we say, look, in whatever format you prefer, if you want to train someone in person, no problem. If you prefer to just hop on, no problem. If you just want to sit down on your computer and say, let me show you how to do that, whatever framework or format you prefer, know-how will just come alongside that, capture that knowledge without any of your own effort, to convert it into documentation, convert it into process, and then once it's in, we like to say at know-how, capture the way you do it once in the way you do it, facilitate it to everyone instantly in any language, as opposed to never.
Yeah.
That's the alternative.
100%.
People say, well, what are my options? Well, the option one is, just teach Manuel how to do it and have him turn his know-how app on and point it at you. Or never. And that's just what we find is that for most people, rightfully so, the prospect of documenting the way we do something, it's go get a root canal or document the way I do it. They're root canal every day, right? At least I get a free toothbrush.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we didn't create the problem, and we didn't try to solve a new problem at know-how. We like to joke at know-how that the problem we solved was here when they were building the pyramids, and Mustafa knew how all these blocks fit together, and 1,000 other guys didn't, and then Mustafa gets crushed by a rock, and they're oh shoot,
how do we do this?
Did anybody chisel that down?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's not a new problem. Know-how, we've been in this industry for a little over a few years, and it's really just about I would say just the coalescence and the timing of some just macro events that have come together. My background in a nutshell, Know-how it was founded by 3 individuals, and so we have one individual named Pedro. He's a brilliant engineer. Another individual named Travis, bar none, one of the top product thinkers and marketers out there, and then myself. So my background, kind of farm town kid, moved to the big city, did what I knew. I knew how to I knew teams, I knew construction. So I, at a young age, started building construction companies. Ended up buying a home service franchise, really, young.
Yeah.
And 19, 20, 30 staff, just figuring it out. And then ended up kind of had the opportunity to then move into the franchisor side and just experience the challenge. At that point, we were able to grow it up across the network to about 400 locations. And, I was part of that executive leadership team, and it was challenging. How do you, especially we had a lot of turnover, we had work that, we were in a trade where, we were the last set of hands to touch the project. And so our work was very visible. And then we had, and then our world involved a lot of ladders, a lot of that type of stuff. So there was a lot of safety issues. So the challenge is it's that proverbial question as you scale. As you scale, how do you keep the French fries tasting the same?
Yeah.
And we had a lot of challenges, and we made a lot of mistakes. We thought LMS was the answer, and then we're oh yeah, young people don't like LMS, right? and then we thought that binders was the answer, and then we're oh yeah, what if they go to our competitor and they just hand over our playbook, and it was all
Right.
these challenges. So that was some of the genesis for me in terms of thinking about, this is not just an us problem. This is a challenge that really, where you have growing organizations that have organized labor, it's an issue. And it just so happens that there's been some compounding effects with the transition of knowledge as people retire, the changes of the strong preferences of young people coming in, and just the fact that these industries are unpredictable and chaotic.
Yeah.
And so we like the fact that that the way we do things has become increasingly segmented. So it's not just show up and rip out the drywall, as you know. It's show up and take this action, report it here, log it there, scan it there, click it there, and for a worker, some people think that the solution is a unified solution, and I think that in a utopian version of the future, I think that would be optimal. There's reasons why I don't think that will come to pass. But
Right.
at the end of the day, one of the things that creates friction is that not only is there difficulty in becoming familiar and competent in each dance move that is involved in doing the job, and then it changes based on the carrier. That's a lot of complexity for
Right.
someone who's not well rested, who oftentimes has been trained in highly fragmented bursts, and someone who doesn't speak English at home. Like that's a big lift.
Yeah.
And so at Know How, our focus is like, well, how do we, beyond just saying this is how it all fits together, how can we also solve the question like this answers how to pack the truck, how to turn off the alarm, how to install the fall rest harness, and how to log it in this software, how to scan it with this. And so
That's cool.
That's been kind of a big part of our focus.
Yeah.
And you know what? And we learn a lot. We do these reports because we're eager for the feedback as well.
Right.
Because we believe that we're trying to solve problems that matter. We are trying to be in like that painkiller business.
Right.
And so that's a long-winded way of saying, experienced building trades and service-based companies. Experienced it at a small scale, a medium scale, and a very large scale.
Yeah.
Experienced the challenges, attempted, let's call it, to solve it with common solutions. Experienced the buyer's remorse of incinerating cash on the other side of trying to take, ways of solving things that work well in like white collar environments. Like just put it in SharePoint, put it in Google Drive, grab an LMS off the shelf, and recognize that the service industry, particularly kind of the blue collar service verticals, it's just different, right?
Yeah,
it's just
very different.
So I think I kind of ice the cake with this is that we believe that you take that young person.
Yeah.
When we say Gen Z, we're talking about someone. Gen Z goes all the way back to 13 years old, but I don't think there's a lot of restorers hiring 13-year-olds, right? But that worker who's like 18 to 24.
Yeah.
And no question, we care about all these intergenerational workforce.
Right.
But that person who's 18 to 24, they show up on a job site, and oftentimes, like we have the data to suggest that sometimes in the first 30 days, the most common sentiment that they have when they get home, and they're asked by a loved one, "How was your day?" They feel mentally fatigued.
Yeah.
But not necessarily physically exhausted.
Yeah.
Because there's the mental fatigue of saying, like, why is it so hard
To do this.
to just do it, And then they walk into the garage or walk into the kitchen and change a component on the transmission on their dad's hot rod or make sourdough bread with no resistance as long as they have this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we basically are trying to create that same experience in service verticals.
In the workplace. Yeah.
The Success Elevated podcast is brought to you by SOS Navigator. SOS Navigator is an on-demand training platform geared towards marketing, personal development, and business growth. We understand that as a business owner in the service industry, you wear a million hats. Let SOS Navigator be a simple and cost-effective way for you to continue to grow your business. Click the link in the show notes below and use code SOS Podcast to get 10% off your next on-demand training course.
One thing that we joke around a lot about is so much of training in the restoration world, and this is in a lot of industries, so I hate picking on restoration because it's a common issue, is, hey, just hired John, so happy you're an employee here. here's what your training is. Go follow Bob around for the next week. And hopefully by the end of that, you know how to do everything, and it's this, know-how and what you guys are solving is hopefully streamlines a lot of that process and standardizes it so that, hey, how Bob does it might not be exactly how it's supposed to be done, or how Bob does it is different than how Sally does it, or whatever, right? And so finding a way to have consistent processes across the board for your entire team, make it really easy to search and, okay, yeah, I did that once. Bob showed me how to do that once, but I can't remember exactly how to do it. Let me go ahead and do that, search for this and know how or whatever. And because my team already created this process, it's super easy for me to find. And that I think solves a lot of the headache when it comes to training employees. And it's because you got these owner operators, they're like, I don't have the time, just go follow Bob around. And it's like, well, while they're following Bob around, if they could just record some of that stuff with know-how, utilize know-how a little bit, then maybe the next time there's a standard process for it.
Yeah, I would say that there's two components there. I'll just speak to briefly. One is Bob has been doing it that way for years.
Right.
And so our response to that is, Bob, do what you do best. Maria, when you're there on site, just launch our company hub, Know-How Hub, point it at him, and Know-How will be building documentation in real time.
Yeah.
So the days are gone where you film it and then expect young people to watch a video, right? No, the day is now film it, receive it, have it auto-trimmed and auto-edited, auto-converted, and then available in any language, and then train a language model, all in one transaction, right?
So cool.
And so that's today. And then the other component of it is, and this is just the reality of workers today, is that workers just don't retain knowledge, and so that lack of retention of training also fuels search queries. And so oftentimes when people say, well, we already use Google Drive, or we already use this, I say, yeah, but those systems are optimized for understanding, for a worker who knows how to search, almost an exact file name or contextual name. But the reality is that workers on site, they tend to know three things, what we've learned. One is they have pieces of their training. They'll say, okay, I think I have to do this and this app and this and this. But in reality, they've confused two different software products.
Yeah.
And so, so they're lost.
Yeah.
As opposed to a system like Howie will perceive that, actually, I think you're asking is a question about this tool, right? They'll also know what they just did. So they'll say, I just did this, what do I do next? And so that ability to detect where you are in the process. And then the ability of I just can see what's in front of me, right? What do I do with this, right? And so that is really much more attuned to how we think that the person approaches a question.
Yeah.
And so you need a system, that can receive that abstraction and produce, we like to refer to it as a trustworthy response.
Yeah. So cool. So cool. I think this leads perfectly into, what we actually talked to you about the first time you were on the podcast and what you've been really talking about, because it just launched recently. But what you've been talking about recently, which is the state of the industry. It's a big thing that you've partnered with several other individuals in the industry, CNR and things like that. But talk a little bit about state of the industry and how you're utilizing that knowledge to help make know-how better, but also just to help restores across the board.
So we believe that in commoditized, unpredictable industries, a huge differentiator is your ability to increase the speed and the quality of your decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of the same services. We use a lot of the same equipment.
Yep.
We wait, we kind of wait for the skies, so to speak. I think every restorer has tried some kind of rain dance over the last 2 quarters, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, what is the competitive playing field? And the competitive playing field is often your ability to be able to make a quality decision quickly and then operationalize that across your team faster than your competitor. So that's kind of our bread and butter. But an expression of that is that with CNR Magazine, the kind of leading authoritative media brand in our industry, they are experts in really how do you take that journalistic approach and to be able to and move those themes into the market. From our side, we are very good researchers. We're very good at analytics, understanding how to take an abstract data set and kind of bring out the common sets of information points. And so, that marriage has produced 2 years in a row of the State of the Restoration Industry report. You can go back to the stateofrestoration.com and get past reports. But yesterday, we launched the intake for the 2024 report. And so in 2023, we saw some just big headline themes, an actual resurgence of TPA work, companies that were really bullish on going into commercial beginning to retract with the cost of capital.
Yeah.
We started to see a correlation between, companies that are finding ways to pay more and the retention that they're seeing. And then certainly like the banner was, the belle of the ball was AI. The AI was the headline.
People got a lot of questions about AI.
Big time. But we broke it into buckets and we said, Hayden, where would you put yourself? Are you open to it? Are you using it? Are you opposed to it? And, well over 3/4 of restorers are saying that we're either open to it or we're using it. And and so, not to say there aren't like strange dystopian versions of the future, but at the end of the day, the way things are moving is towards an AI-enhanced workforce. So in my presentation earlier, I like to quote Jensen Huang, the CEO at NVIDIA. Built this $3.4 trillion company now.
Yeah.
And he answered a question by saying this. He said, look, AI is not going to take your job. A human using AI is going to take your job.
It's going to take your job. Yeah.
And so we at Know How, we talk about that as kind of the rise of that bionic worker, that enhanced worker. And so going into this year, we're going to be looking at, we're going to go deeper into the AI component. We're going to lift a few more rocks. We're also very interested in, the Labor Bureau statistics in the U.S. has indicated for quite a while that the workforce is becoming increasingly more English as a second language.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're going to be looking deeper into trying to map that out and understand what does that mean for the workforce? How much, what are the recruitment pools that people could be drawing from? And really what's representative in the workforce today.
Yeah.
We're also very interested in, there was a lot of enthusiasm to get into commercial work in 22. Cost of capital, I think, really cooled that.
Yeah.
And there's some other components. But I think it's interesting to see kind of how does that interest to kind of accelerate back into commercial work, how does that kind of play out in the marketplace?
Yeah.
And a host of other things. We've pruned back some elements, but at the end of the day, the intake closes August 16th of 2024. Okay. The report gets published kind of in the first part of November. There's going to be a cascading series of webinars that happen each Wednesday in November where we discuss it, we bring in experts, we talk about the data. Right. You're not going to want to miss that. But what I would say is that our call to action is twofold. Participate in the survey. It's going to take 20 minutes.
And we'll have that link in the show notes. In the description, we'll have that link for the survey.
Yeah, candrmagazine.com/state of the industry.
Perfect.
So the question is what's the call to action? Take the survey. It's going to take 20 minutes. And then set aside an afternoon with your management team in mid-November.
Join a webinar.
Join a webinar. That's actually, good point. Join the webinar, and then afterwards have lunch arrive or whatever, and then you'll all have the report. And the report is written in such a way where it gives you prompted questions, discussion questions, and take some time before you kind of get into the busyness of December to say, what does all of this mean for us? Yeah. And then how should this inform our decisions, our allocation of capital, our strategy, our budgetary thinking as we look to 2025? That would be kind of my call to action. Is it's one calendar event to take 20 minutes to do the survey, another calendar event in November to get your team around, get everyone around get everyone around the table and say, let's set aside some time to talk about these themes and these trends that are impacting all of us.
Love it. That's a great way to kind of sum everything up, because I think ultimately, we found some great knowledge in that State of the Industry report. It's been super eye-opening to see what restorers are dealing with, what are some struggles that they have, how, even something as simple as like, how quickly do you get paid for a job? Like all of those things are really, really eye-opening to help us better understand the restoration industry. But if you own a restoration company, it's eye-opening to know what is going on with, all of your competitors and your peers to see what you can do to maybe separate yourself. Right. Maybe you can find a way to pay your employees better, or maybe you can find a way to work with someone that can shrink the time to get paid from an insurance company, right? Like those types of things to help you separate yourselves are what's going to differentiate you as a company. And that's why something like the state of the industry is super, super impactful. So, yeah.
We think so. And thanks for the opportunity to shine a spotlight on it, because we think it's important.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a, it's kind of a gift, it's kind of like a piece of sweat equity,
Yeah.
It's not something that we charge for.
Yeah.
It's something where CNR Magazine and Know How, we believe that this is an important thing to do.
Yeah.
And we both have our strengths. And so we've locked arms together to do this. And we hope it's kind of a cadence that, the industry can start to really make part of their annual rhythm.
Yeah. Love it. Leighton, if people have more questions about that or about Know How, and want to maybe get in touch with you to ask some questions or just learn a little bit more, where can they get in contact with you?
Take the survey. You go to C, the word and, so candrmagazine.com/state of restoration. And that'll be in the show notes. If you want past copies, right, you can go to stateofrestoration.com.
Perfect.
And then if you want to learn about how we're, using AI to transform restoration companies, try Know How.
Try Know How.
TryKnowHow.com. TryKnowHow.com. Awesome.
Leighton, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's great to have you back on and chat about all things Know How and the state of the industry. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to have you on again in the future, I'm sure. But seriously appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Hayden.
Yeah, thanks, Leighton.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.